Oh my. get it? Oh my. Alright. Anyways, so let's see here. So for those of you who were not in class the other day, or maybe you had a little trouble doing your homework here, I'm going to help you out, try to rehash what we did in class. So this is the chart that you had to do leading up to that last class, and most people were pretty good with it. You know, we had an initial deposit. Banks have to hold on to a certain amount of it. They're required reserves, which in this case is 10%. So $1,000, you got to hold on to 100. What do they do with the rest of it? They lend it out, gets deposited in the next bank, so on and so on. And when you did this, you figured out that at the end of the day, the new demand deposits in all of the banks, after you went through and exhausted an infinite number of banks, or however many it is, you got to $10,000 in total demand deposit increases. Of that $10,000 in demand deposits, banks had to hold on to 10% of it, which is $1,000, which means that they lent out the remaining $9,000. Now, there's a shortcut way to do this. Now, on the worksheet you had to figure out this row here. And it was blank, but you had some of the totals. So the way you did it was you added up these ones and then subtracted here and got your number. So I did 10,000 minus 1,000 minus 900 minus 810, and I came up with 7290. And the same was true here. You also notice that whatever the column is here, this number is 10% of this one. Okay? Another way to check that your chart is right, these two columns, your loans and your required reserves, add up to the first one. 9,000 plus 1,000 equals 10,000. 6561 plus 729 gets you to 7290. You can double check me if you would like to. But the question is how to do this really fast, because on the AP test you don't have that much time. Well, here's how it works. So they're going to ask you two types of questions. They're going to ask you for the max increase in the money supply, which is, remember, dollars that are very easy to get your little grubbers on. So money that is in your pocket, money that is in a checking account, an account at a bank that you can very easily go and say, oh, you know what? I like it at the bank, but sometimes I just like to have it in my hand and I like to touch it. Why? Because it's fun to touch my money. And I go, whoa. All right, anyways, very easy to access money is what we refer to as our money supply. We call it M1. And the other thing they're going to ask for is the increase in demand deposits at the bank. And they're not the same all the time. So the instinct is that they're going to be the same answer, but they're not. I'll talk about that in a second. So the way you do this, the first thing you have to do for these types of problems is you got to figure out your money multiplier, which is use this formula, 1 over the required reserve ratio. Our required reserve ratio is 10%. Here's what I don't want you to do. 1 over 10. No, it is not 0.1. You're going to mess it all up if you do that. Remember, it is 10%. So it is really 1 over 10 over 100, which equals 10. Notice you'll get a lot different answers if you use 10 versus 0.1. All right, so now what you have to do to find the max increase in demand deposits, we'll do that first. The max increase in demand deposits. Let me step back here. So let me ask you, how much did our demand deposits change from the very beginning of this exercise to the very end? Or what was the increase in the bank's total demand deposits? Total, all banks, $10,000. So the way to get it is, if you notice, 1 to 10,000 is by multiplying by 10. Well, watch what we do here. Money multiplier is 10. Multiplied by the initial deposit, which was 1,000. And lo and behold, you get 10,000. Now notice, a lot of you probably will know the answer to this, but if we had a 20% required reserve ratio, what happens to the banks? You. I'm waiting. Mr. Sutton, the banks don't lend as much money. They don't, which means that your total is going to get smaller here. And in part because your money multiplier will become lower. In the opposite direction, it is also true. If this were 5% instead of 10%, banks would lend more, and you would get bigger totals. Fair enough? If you have any questions, let me know. But let's do the last one, which is the increase in the money supply. The instinct is to say that they are the same, but remember, I told you, the money supply includes all dollars that are very easily accessible. For this example, I don't know if I said it, but I'm saying it now. This $1,000 was, let's say, in Mr. Sutton's pocket, or your pocket, or Joe down the street's pocket. It doesn't matter whose pocket it was in, but it was in somebody's pocket before it went in the bank. Well, that money that was in my pocket, or Joe's pocket, was it in the money supply? Yeah, it was really easily accessible. So it counts in the M1 measure of money, or the money supply. So the fact that it got deposited in the bank didn't change the amount of money in the money supply. The only thing that changed the money in the money supply was the banks doing their lending. So, to answer this, to figure out your total max increase in money supply, you have to subtract this $1,000 because it was already in the money supply before we started this operation. So just the mere fact they got deposited in the bank didn't change the money supply. The only thing that changed the money supply was the fact that we were doing all this lending. So the max increase in money supply is $9,000. You notice your $9,000 is right here, the total amount of the loans that you increased. Because remember, those loans ended up being redeposited someplace else, and they were a liability for some bank. So they became part of the money supply. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. Well, one thing before I go. Remember, there it is. I had it and I lost it and I had it back again. Remember, this maximum increase depends on one simple assumption here. What do the banks have to do with every single penny that's deposited in their bank to get this max increase? They have to loan it, and it has to be redeposited in a bank. If that does not happen for any reason, your numbers here will end up smaller. So if a bank chooses to hold excess reserves, or people do not redeposit the money back into the bank, you get a smaller number. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. For those of you that missed class the other day because you're on the college visits or whatever, the worksheets that we did or were given for homework and in class are going to be posted on my Edmodo site. So let me know if you have any trouble. Thank you very much. Have a good night.